Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
What goes up must come down.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with offices in Louisville and Bowling Green. Your host, five-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I mention the words stock market? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I mention Wall Street? Well, for the saver personality, these terms are usually synonymous with risk. Many of you might be thinking, what have I been reading lately as evidenced by all this risk that we might be taking, and why would savers be kind of skeptical of the stock market and Wall Street? Well, just to give you an idea, this is called Investment News Magazine. Now, Investment News Magazine is a great periodical, and it's written mainly to and for investment advisors such as myself, so there's probably no reason you would ever read this. So again, I want to preface this show, first of all. I am not against the stock market. People know that I do a lot of fixed annuities, and we don't do a lot in the market, but folks, we've got over $50 million invested for our clients in our Charles Schwab platform in the market or in securities. So yes, I'm all about the stock market, but what I don't like is to put all of my clients' money in the stock market. I'm a fiduciary. I've personally been licensed to sell securities for 30 years. I understand the stock market, but more importantly, I understand the mind of savers and how they are nervous about Wall Street and the stock market. So let's kind of grab a few headlines. This is kind of interesting, and maybe it'll be a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, Investment News, America's favorite financial sidekick, Aaron Orander, is going to throw these up full screen. I opened this one up. This is August 20th, and first headline. Let's go to this one, Aaron. It says, Brokers Sting Ameriprise. The subtitle says, Firm on hook for $4.5 million for failing to supervise thieving reps. Just on the next page over. Number 2, here's our second headline. Morgan, that's Morgan Stanley, Morgan Comp Plan could pinch pay. Changes hit brokers who don't sell enhanced services to small accounts. You scroll down here and it says, basically the head of the operations for Morgan Stanley is warning advisors who work with accounts under $250,000 that you may not make as much money. By the way, if you don't have $250,000, we'll be happy to meet with you, folks. Here's another one. Let's go to, so that was number 2. Here's one. I just flipped the page, number 3. Lockwood, whoever that is, Lockwood fined for extra trade fees. SEC says clients were not told of additional costs for wrap accounts. Here's a good one. Number 4. Galvin goes after broker in California. This is a Mr. William Galvin. He's a regulator, and apparently some broker out there was ripping off people, and so he's going after them, all right? And then finally, I could keep reading. Here's number 5. We're just on a couple of pages over, all right? Number 5 says, Wells Fargo's house still in disarray. It says DOJ, that's the Department of Justice, investigating potential anomalies concerning bids for tax credits. So basically, folks, here's the thing. If you're a saver, and I'm reading these kind of articles, you go, exactly, Tony. That's why I'm not real trusting of the stock market, nor the representatives behind the stock market. Again, if you're a saver, I understand this. People have legitimate concerns about the markets. Now, when you mention the stock market or financial institutions and you see these headlines, you have to say to yourself, so if you're a saver, why in the world, which some of you do this now because I've met you, why are some of you blindly throwing all of your money into the stock market? And you might say, well, Tony, I don't have money in the stock market, do I? And I would say, well, yeah, if you have a 401k, if you get that puppy out and look at the statement, the majority of you have a lot of money at risk. Now, over the last few episodes of the WorryFree Retirement, speaking of risk, we've delved into this study of what is longevity risk. which again, the definition of longevity risk is people living longer than ever before and the likelihood, because they're living longer, that they could one day run out of money. And then the problem with longevity risk, we got these 4 other risks that we've talked about: sequence of return risk, long-term care risk, interest rate risk, and today's topic is stock market risk. But you're sitting there saying, oh, Tony, I'm a saver, but you obviously haven't been keeping up with the headlines. In fact, today's date of this recording in our Louisville studio is August 28th, 2018, and guess what? The Dow yesterday just surpassed 26,000. That is a record high, folks. More power to the Dow. So no wonder everybody, savers, investors, and speculators alike, are joyously experiencing the longest single consecutive run of the increases in the stock market ever. Again, this euphoric state is nothing new, though. Personally, sometimes you got to go back and look at history, folks. Personally, I witnessed this same euphoria back in 2007. Now, back then, the Dow was around 14,000, which was huge, and it was a raging bull market. Everyone in 2007, just like today, kind of assumed, hey, this is just going to keep going up. By the way, whenever you hear bull market, that's good, all right? Bear market, well, let's get a little help on what a bear market is.
Bad, that's bad, that's bad.
All right, I thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, while the market is definitely on a tear, again, historically speaking, it is actually long overdue for a correction. In fact, Kiplinger's in an article states that between 1926 and 2017, bull markets last an average of 9 consecutive years. So you say, well, what's the big deal there, Tony? Well, if that's the case, we should have already had a market crash back in March 9 of this year. If we see, historical things are not always true. History's true, but whether they repeat themselves is unclear. That's just it with the stock market. Nobody can time what it's going to do. So bull market, we're still in. Are we going to have a bear market? Which again, let's have our little friend remind us what a bear market is.
Bad, that's bad, that's bad.
So if we have a bear market, Kiplinger's also says that the average bear market, and hold on to your hats here. Think about being retired, folks, or retiring soon. Listen to this statistic. A bear market generally lasts consecutively 1.4 years. And you say, well, that's not bad, Tony. Bull market's 9, bear market's 1.4. What in the world should I be worried about? Listen to this. During those bear markets, though, the average cumulative loss is 41%. In other words, again, historically speaking, that if we go through another bear market, you could be in for a tough time when it comes to your retirement. Now, assuming you're retired, or maybe in the next several years you're thinking about retiring, you got to ask yourself, and this is what the show's all about, should you be in a position where you are risking your money, or the majority of it, in the stock market? Again, when we reflect back on 2007, I went through this. People were not worried about the market going down. In fact, Employee Benefit Research Institute did an interesting study in February of 2009. So again, timeline, 2007 things were great. 2008 the market goes down 40%. 2009 they go back and say, well, what were people doing in 2007? Were they nervous about the stock market? Look at this. Let's throw this up full screen, Aaron. It says nearly 1 in 4 people between the ages of 56 and 65, that would be what I call halftime, had more than 90% of their account balances in equities. And look at this. More than 2 in 5 of that same age group had more than 70% in equities. And thus what happened was the Pension Protection Act of 2006 started kind of requiring 401ks to offer what's called life cycle funds or target date funds, which the purpose of those was to try to rebalance and get you out of the market, or at least be more age appropriate, as they like to say. But the problem with that is these target date funds, you may have noticed these, like it might say on your 401k, the 2015 fund, the 2020 fund, the 2040 fund. What that means is the longer you extend that date out, let's say you want to go with the 2040 fund, that means the more exposure to stock market risk you'll have. But with even these target date funds, people were still risking their money by having too much equity concentration. So what are we supposed to do here? Well, the point is with the worry-free retirement, we're all about the return of our money. We're not as worried as we get into retirement or near retirement of the return on it. So what do average savers do when it comes to retiring, or possibly even retiring sooner than they think? Well, we've got two special guests, a married couple, and they decided to retire a little early, but more importantly, I want to get their take on what was going through their mind when they retired, kind of why they wanted to retire early, how they're enjoying the fruits of their labor, but more importantly, what are they doing to mitigate stock market risk? You stay tuned. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, 403b, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government has essentially a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. Tony Walker calls this the 401k tax tumor. For over 33 years, retirement specialist Tony Walker has helped thousands of savers worry less about money by creating game plans to deal with your tax tumor. Get control of your retirement by controlling the taxes owed on it. Schedule a free meeting to see if you can reduce your tax tumor and provide a guaranteed income you can never outlive. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. We are talking about stock market risk, but more specifically, how someone who retires early might be concerned about stock market risk and what they've done to alleviate concerns there. So with us in the studio is Mr. Greg and Cheryl Leathers, and they've agreed to come on board, and we've become acquainted, and the idea that you are now retired at a relatively young age I thought was intriguing. And of course, our audience, I'm sure, would love to hear a little bit about that. So I guess, Greg, we were talking before we went on. Tell us a little bit about the motivation, for lack of a better word, as to why you decided to kind of pull that ripcord a little earlier than normal.
Well, my wife Cheryl, she was an oncology nurse for 37 years. And so I've been around cancer pretty much my whole life as far as with her. And more than one time she made the comment of people retiring and, 6 months later they're saying, hey, I've got cancer, I've got 6 months to live. And so that was one motivation for me to want to retire. I want, why wait? Let's go. At 58, I was ready to go. So that was a big motivator for me, was to start younger.
And Cheryl, we were talking, although you loved your work, it's interesting where God has kind of taken you. Describe a little bit about what you did and now what you're doing as a kind of a second full-time career, which is really cool. You and Greg together. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. I like Greg said, I was in nursing for 37 plus years and loved nursing, loved caring for people. Never thought I would retire. Thought he'd retire and I'd be going in a day or two a week. And cutting back to part-time and having grandchildren and wanting to be able to spend more time with the grandchildren and impact their lives in a way, hopefully, for the Lord. And also, the healthcare today is really not allowing, or I felt like wasn't allowing me to care for people the way I used to care for people when I started 37 years ago. And so the Lord kind of grabbed me and said, step out here in faith and I'm going to let you care for people, but in a different way. And so that kind of opened the door for early retirement for me. And now we have started our own mission ministry and do medical missions along with other missions. So God filled that, I think what would have been a void for me, filled that for me to be able to care for and love on people just in the way he had planned for me, not like I had planned. So that's where my retirement came from.
And Greg, you had talked, how has it been the transition of both of you being home full-time? And share with our audience, obviously you all love each other to death, but what have you kind of discovered now that you're both together so often. What can you share with the audience?
Well, you can be together too much, and there's times that we are together too much. So, we try to promote each other to be able to go do stuff, go out with friends, go have coffee, go play golf, do different things
golf.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
To do different
Anytime you need a
things
partner,
together.
let me know, Greg, by the way.
Hacker like me, huh? So yeah, we try to find times where we can get apart from each other. So you need that. That's healthy, I feel like. So.
And we were talking a little bit about, we always say on the show, people at work versus capital at work, and you all are in that now, capital at work. Mm-hmm. So Cheryl, you were saying a little bit about, well, I guess, Greg kind of went and worked overtime and I worked. And what's been the transition financially in your mind being retired?
That's been a challenge for us a little bit, just because with Greg's job, he could work overtime. So when we were doing different things, if we needed extra income, he could work extra, that sort of thing. And just for us being adjusting ourselves to more of a fixed income, I guess we always had a fixed income, but it was a little bit false because he could work overtime. And so that's been a challenge for us, and just refiguring, okay, you've got this amount of money, maybe we're spending too much here, we need to cut back here. And so I still feel like, I've been retired a little over a year. He just retired in February, so we're still new at it, but it's great.
Good. No regrets.
No regrets. No.
And kind of in our remaining time, let's talk a little bit, and Greg, I'll point this over to you, this question, but this theme obviously is the stock market. And again, folks, we're not encouraging everybody to bow to the stock market. We don't mean that, but you're kind of living proof, and you're seeing that now that you're retired and you really probably don't want to go back to work, you took all your investments and deployed those investments in different ways. But what were your thoughts about maybe being a little more concentrated outside stocks? Give people a feel for your thoughts on money now and the possibility of losing money now that you're in retirement.
Well, the first and most important thing to me, except for Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, was somebody I could trust. And so that was where I wanted to go, is find someone that I could trust and put my faith in. And so that was a big factor for me. And at work, I had an option. I could either do the mailbox money monthly, or I could do a lump sum. And so I ended up doing the lump sum, and I did it for various different reasons. And one of those reasons was I felt like it was more secure as far as putting in annuities. And so, and then I also had, it was good where if something happened to me or Cheryl, that my children could receive that money, whereas the other option, they couldn't. So,
but now you still have some money in the stock market, correct?
Yes.
Just not as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feel like you got a pretty good handle on it, though, and everything,
yes,
and feel good about it.
Yeah, I feel good about it, yes.
What about yourself, Cheryl, in terms of just your investments and what you're doing, and anything you might share with the audience specifically, especially females, quite frankly? I don't want to stereotype here, but we meet people day in and day out who are thinking about retirement. What would you share with somebody that's late 50s, early 60s, and they're thinking about life? I know locally we're recording this show in Louisville on August 28th. A local, pretty well-known figure just passed away at 63. So to kind of close this out, what would you share with the audience about this whole notion of retirement, priorities, money, things you want to do with your life?
I think first and foremost, if the Lord is prompting your heart to take a step of faith, to investigate it. Don't shut the door. And if you do feel like that's happening, to seek, as Greg said, someone you can trust in the financial world that can help guide and direct you in that. Because obviously, if you're going to retire, you have to have money to live on. So to check that out. And then when the Lord does call you and you take that step of faith, if He's called you, He will provide. And so through our step of faith together, we have been able to start our own 501c3. And don't think you have to know everything about it, because all I knew was nursing, tunnel vision. And the Lord has put in my path people to help with that. And that happened pretty quickly, which my understanding was you may have to do it again because it doesn't always happen that way. And so we were able to start our ministry, in His name ministry. And we are able to do medical missions in Honduras. And I feel like the Lord has brought it full circle. And I promised I wasn't going to do this. But I took care of children with cancer when I first started. And recently I was approached by a mission ministry to do a first-time children's cancer camp in Honduras. And if it was a success, it was going to be an annual event. And I'm excited to say that we are doing our second annual Kids Cancer Camp in Honduras because it was a success. Wow. And so again, all the glory goes to God for that, because He's the one that has arranged all that, but we had to be willing to be obedient and step out in faith. And we did, and we were nervous because we didn't know all the answers or how it was going to go, but we did, and He has blessed us through that, and again, has allowed us to both care for people in a way that we never dreamed He would, or that we would be able to.
Well, great words of encouragement. We thank you so much for being on the show. We thank you for your service and your leap of faith. Speaking of leap of faith, folks, when I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bible and what it has to say about your money. You stay tuned.
Worried about running out of money in retirement? For a limited time, 5-time author and retirement specialist Tony Walker is making available his latest book, Mailbox Money for Life. For your free copy, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Let's face it, the last thing you want in retirement is to be full of life and flat broke. I'm Tony Walker, and for the past 33 years, I've made it my life's mission to make certain that my clients don't go broke in retirement by providing mailbox money for life. Let me show you how easy it is to be worry-free in retirement by creating a guaranteed income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started today. All right, a good cup of coffee on this beautiful morning in our Louisville studios. And assuming you're a saver and you agree with the notion that what goes up must come down, how would you answer this question? Why do you have money at risk in the stock market? Now, if we're honest with ourselves, you and I would answer it this way. Well, Tony, dummy, we want to make more money on our money. So let's stay with that answer. Why do you feel you need to risk your money in order to make more money? Why do you need more money? Or why do I need more money? What are we really concerned about in the future? Obviously, we need more money. We're thinking about the future, right? Because you probably have more money than you need right now at this very moment. So the money we're talking about stockpiled in your 401k or wherever it is, it's for the future. Now, again, that's legitimate. I'm not trying to underplay that at all. But what are we worried about here? Are we worried about running out of money? Are we worried, is it a peer thing? Are we worried we're going to miss out on the market by not having money in the stock market and all our friends are making money right now? Why do we as savers even risk our money, especially if we don't have to? Maybe that's the question. In other words, if I could help you accomplish all of your goals and objectives without having so much money at risk, would that be something you would be interested in? My granddad, let's take him for instance. I always talk about my granddad, retired in 1978. Now again, I'm not saying we shouldn't own stocks, but let me tell you a fact about my granddad. That man was the most worry-free character I've ever met. He lived below his means, and guess how much stock he owned? Zero. Guess how much growth mutual funds he owned? Nada, okay? My granddad knew that he had his mailbox money, and all he had to do was not spend more than what came in the mailbox. Really pretty simple stuff. Well, we ask ourselves about the Bible here. Did Jesus talk about this notion of wanting too much? Well, let's go, Aaron. This is Matthew, interesting verse, Matthew 16:26. Matthew 16:26. And Jesus says, good question here. For what will a man be profited if he gains the whole world, listen to this, yet forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give? Well, this is pretty scary stuff. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? In other words, Jesus warns us that in our fallen state, you and I are naturally going to be what we call greedy. We want more and more regardless of what we even know we need in the future. See, our future is uncertain as evidenced by all these articles. We can't always put our trust in people. We can't put our trust in the market. Even these annuities that I love, that may not be enough money, folks, all right? But what happens is greed sets in, this desire to have more and more regardless of what Jesus would say, potentially devastating consequences. We read about people that are scamming people all the time. they're willing to sell their souls to befriend people and then deny those people and cheat them out of money for money. Now, why would you do that? Because you and I are fallen folks. We've got to assume that greed can rear its ugly head at any time. And yes, no one's exempt from this. So how do we deal with greed? God says what we need to do is put more of our trust in Him and quit worrying so much about the future. God would say greed is evidence that this stuff is just a lie anyway. Nobody knows how much money you're going to need in the future. Nobody knows whether you're even going to be here in the future. And assuming you're a follower of Christ, we must constantly remind ourselves that we're in an unnatural state. Think about this. Watchman Nee describes it this way. Imagine we're going out to the ocean. I don't know about Aaron here, but I can hold my breath maybe about 2 minutes underwater. It is not natural for me to go underwater. So what does man do? He creates and invents scuba gear. So I got this scuba gear, I got these oxygen tanks, and I go deep into the ocean. I'm swimming around with the sharks and everybody else, and all of a sudden, the oxygen runs out. You see, folks, you got to have oxygen to be in an unnatural state. And unfortunately, if you're a Christian, this world doesn't always feel natural. So where's our source of oxygen? Our source of oxygen comes from the Word of God. It comes from the Spirit of God. And I can assure you, while that oxygen tank of yours chasing after money may run out one day, and it will, God's oxygen tank will not. I hope these are encouraging words. And more importantly, I hope you will learn, just as I'm trying to learn, that in times of greed or worry or angst, turn to the one who is the ultimate giver, and that's God. Well, how about you? You're sitting there saying, Tony, all that's well and good, but the more you talk, man, the more I'm getting worried about the future. I don't have a game plan. Maybe I do have too much in the stock market, you're saying. Maybe I missed out on the market. I'm over here making 1% on a CD or something. We can help. Let us show you some of our proprietary work, our proprietary software. Let us show you how a split IRA concept works. Let us show you how our platform with Charles Schwab, which incidentally is one of the lowest management fee platforms in the industry, and yes, it's supervised by yours truly. You see, when you meet with me, you work with a staff that's going to be personal, one-on-one, and yes, I will continue to monitor your progress personally. I'll make that promise to you. So what are you waiting for? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started button, and let's meet at either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky office. Again, it's absolutely free, no cost or obligation. We've also got 24/7 phone service now. So if you're sitting there and saying, well, I think I'll just call up right now, call 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-9255, and we will quickly respond to your requests. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. I've enjoyed being with you. You remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.
Thank you for watching the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. If you need a safe and simple game plan for your retirement, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and schedule a free, no-obligation meeting with Tony.